A lot of times when girls ask me how old I am, I'll say a million different things. I'll be like, I'm so old, I need Viagra to even get it up, shit like that. I'd be like, I used to live in LA, so however old I am, like add 15 years. I've had surgery, whatever. I have a bunch of funny shit I've said. All that shit works, whatever. But in this case, I had no reason to treat it as a shit test. Just no reason whatsoever to treat it as a shit test. She's been completely friendly, right? So to actually treat it as a shit test would be massively insecure. Do you guys understand that? It'd be massively insecure to not just be okay with my age and just trust that she'll like me, whatever it is. Jeff did a great video that I think got like a very, very little response compared to what it should have. It was about filters of insecurity. And basically, a point that he made in that video was that, say someone says to you, nice shirt. If you're a very secure person, you should be like, thanks, man. And that's it. But an insecure person who gets that exact same compliment, someone's like, nice shirt, he'd be like, yeah, I had a different shirt actually before, but you know, I thought this would go better for this event, right? It'd be like insecure and trying to justify the shirt because it's the same exact thing logically, same exact thing verbally, but if you're secure, you'll treat it one way. If you're insecure, you'll treat it another way, right? So here, I could have tried to like treat it as a shit test, pass the shit test, whatever, but why not just be secure and put it out there? Right? The other thing with these things like age and height, a lot of guys have like issues with that. They're like, I'm too short, girls think I'm too short, girls think I'm too old, girls think I'm too young. Well, funny enough, all of those are possible. Girls could also think you're too tall potentially, but it's all in the eye of the beholder. I've had many, many sets where I'm with a girl that's like this girl's 18, she might think I'm too old for her, or if she likes me, she might worry that she's too young for me and try and qualify herself. Or I've had sets with like 6 feet tall models that they might say, oh, this guy's too short, it won't work out. But instead what happens because they like me in the set is they start like not wanting to stand up near me because they're afraid I'll think they're too tall. Or they like literally, I've had girls like try and take their high heels off and walk on glass in their bare feet to be shorter for me. So like they won't think they're too tall for me, okay? And why is that? It's because the frame has switched. Right, so on one hand, yeah, okay, there's social, too old, too young, whatever, but if you're truly secure, you can make it work. So just put it out there. Don't try too hard. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how brilliant and witty am I? 10? Whoever said that, you're my new best friend, thank you. 7, really? That's kind. That's kind. 3. Yeah, honestly, like, what am I doing? Where are you from? What do you do? Where you go to school, who you live with, right? Funny enough, these are get to know you questions. A side point, my get to know you questions are a little different. My get to know you questions are, how many of you are there here tonight? How did you get here? Where are you staying? So it's all like trying to figure out logistics questions, but that's my get to know you questions, right? So this one is like, oh, yeah, so you live with your parents, right? I.e., can I pull you back home, right? Or, oh yeah, what part of the city are you in? Or are you from? And so they're all like that sort of thing, but it's boring conversation. Most of you guys probably have more interesting conversation topics than this with the girls that you talk to. However, most of you probably don't have the girls staring at you and giggling all the time, right? And most of you aren't getting laid like the majority of your sets, and most of you guys aren't pulling every night. So what's the difference? What's the difference? This seems like a very lame, boring conversation, and it actually is. But the way that I like to converse is 10 to 15% better than average. That's it. Not great, not amazing, but just 10 to 15% better than average, okay? And the things that I'm adding in are, there are 2 concepts I learned from a book on conversation when I was in high school, actually, that just kind of got me into the game. And the concepts were, 1, assume the burden, okay? As a man, you need to assume the burden of the conversation. You can't trust the girl to move things forward. You have to assume the burden. You have to take initiative, okay? So if you want to move the conversation towards a sexual topic, you have to move it there. If you want to get your opinions in and convey your personality, you have to overtly do that. You can't sit back and let her do it. And especially in the first like 30 seconds to 4 minutes of a pickup, the girl probably isn't going to talk to you at all, either because she's not interested yet, or because she doesn't know what to say yet. So you just have to keep throwing conversation out there until she jumps onto it, okay? Now the best kind of conversation is conversation that conveys you. Conversation that is unique and new. If you say to a girl, where are you from? How many times has she had that conversation before? 10,000, 100,000, who knows? But if you say to a girl, you seem like you're from the East Coast, now that's more interesting. It takes no more thought. It takes zero thought more than saying, where are you from, to say, you seem like you're from the East Coast. Or to say, you don't seem like you're from around here. It's exactly the same question, exactly the same thought, but all I did is, instead of saying the obvious boring thing, I said something 10% more interesting. That's it. And that's all it has to be. You just have to hit that minimum baseline standard. That is all. And then the second concept is, from that book, is the concept of add your wrinkles, which means most conversation, people are just being very logical and straightforward. Anything you can do to make it more interesting, make it more unique, make it more convey your personality, or just add a little bit of wit to it, helps, okay? And you can learn this by studying comedy and just talking to a lot of people, or you can learn it by just stealing good lines from people, which is how I initially did. Whenever I'd hear a quote that I really liked, I would make a note of it. And then I would probably use it at some point later if I remembered it. Or if I heard a funny joke, I would remember the thing that made it funny, and then I would, because it was in my head, maybe come up with a similar joke myself, right? Like, for example, if I were to say to you the sentence, it's important to use the right word because it helps your communication. That's a pretty bland sentence. But if I were to say the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug, that's more interesting. How do I know that? I bought it from Mark Twain. Right? It's just some random thing I heard, but I added a little wrinkle to the conversation. So that's the other thing I'm doing. What I'm doing is saying the boring thing a little bit more interesting, and then I'm also, as I go through my life, when I'm out of set, just making a note to realize what's going on that's interesting around me, so that when I talk to girls or talk to people in general, I feel like I've had an interesting life that I want to share. And then I share that interesting life. Yeah?
How can you assume that after 5 hours the girls will fuck you?
How can I know it?
How can I know? I have met many girls that after some meetings and dates, no.
That's personal to me, the 5-hour thing. For other guys, it might be longer or shorter. Also, the reason that I can say that for me is because I'm constantly putting pressure on them. So if they're not going to, they probably will leave within that 5-hour period. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not gonna allow them to stick with me for 5 hours without making concessions and without getting closer and getting more sexual. Because I'll be obnoxious about it. I'll say that's what she said every other sentence if I have to. You know what I mean? Or I'll be like, oh really? Are you feeling that way? Right, just like I'll make it just overtly, ridiculously, obnoxiously sexual so that they have no choice, right? And then if they get offended by that, I'll be like, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. And then 5 minutes later, I'll start doing it again, right? So why do I have a shorter timeline? I have had girls that took longer. 2 of my most serious girlfriends, one of them took 21 hours of FaceTime before I slept with her, and another one probably took like 10 or 12, right? So that's really long for me. That's actually a really long time for me to spend FaceTime with a girl. So it does happen, but in my mind, 5 is pretty typical.
You go away or they go away after 5 hours? If it doesn't happen?
Well, usually I want it to be continuous, because what happens to me nowadays, if I go out on a date with a girl and then she doesn't sleep with me, is that she Googles me, and then I have a horrendous ordeal to deal with. Because RSD instructors are not exactly the most Google-friendly people for girls. So I want to do anything and everything I can to make sure it happens on the first date, personally, now. But back in the day, I used to get a lot of day twos, and I do it over multiple dates before I was on the internet, essentially. Okay, so yeah, notice those things though. So excuse me, that's a pretty strong indicator of interest, right? We're destined to never work. It was nice meeting you though. She's like, no, it would. It would. So at that moment, pretty much, I'm like, okay, this is down, right? So now I start screening really hard for logistics. I'm not sure exactly where it comes up, but I'm asked like, do you have a bedtime? Right? I'm starting to get very, very close on logistics because now I have the overt indicator of interest, right? As soon as I have it, I'll start capitalizing, I'll start pushing. If I push too hard, she'll let me know, and then I'll back off. Always listening to the girl, but never caring about the answer. Always listening, always using the information. I don't know if there's any poker players in the room, but there's an interesting concept in poker that's similar. They call it raising for information, right? It's like a situation, someone bets, if you just call, you're not gonna find out much because there's no other action on that street, in that betting round. But sometimes it's a good idea, especially in limit poker, instead of calling, if you know you're gonna call a few streets, to just raise right there, put more money in and put the pressure on them and see how they react. and then you can decide on the next street whether to like just quit and not put more money and you put the same amount in as you would later, but you put the pressure on them, put them to a decision. It's the same thing, raising for information, right? What do? You put something out there. You put out a statement of intent like, you're very cute, but this won't work. And then you just gauge her reaction, right? And instead of just waiting and seeing how it unfolds, by putting in that little bit of, call it raising for information or call it just making a bold move in game, by doing that, you find out much more quickly, and then everything you do afterwards can be much more calibrated and much more intelligent. Okay, did you guys hear that? She asked for my name again. How do you interpret that? Good. I interpret that as I'm getting laid tonight. Seriously. All right, literally. Why? Why is that so important? Why is that such a big indicator? She subjected herself to awkwardness to get to know me. Okay? Girls will do just about anything to avoid awkwardness. But by saying, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, what was it again? That's awkward. But she now cares enough about me, she wants to know my name badly enough, wants to get to know me badly enough, that she's willing to make it awkward. That is huge. That's absolutely huge, okay? Actually, a lot of my game rests on the fact that girls don't like to do things that are awkward. It's why I can lean on them like that boulder, like that metaphor that I said, is because most girls will not say the sentence, I don't like you, or you're ugly, or you're boring, right? And so essentially I put them to the choice of they're either gonna comply and go somewhere with me, or they're gonna have to tell me that I'm boring or weird or awkward. And they usually won't do that because it's awkward for them to do it. All right, so for them to put awkwardness on themselves is absolutely huge. So again, right here, I'm about to escalate some more. So she goes, it's midnight, but. Again, I'm thinking, this is where I get laid tonight. All right, and cut, that's all I'll show of this video. But I will show you what the fruits of such a set were in the end. So that's, yeah. So, did you say lights? Who called for lights on that? That's super funny. All right, so that's, the girl I ended up with. Okay? Very cute girl. I'll show you one more just because someone said wow. All right. So I didn't do anything. Thanks, guys. So I didn't do anything all that amazing conversationally. Right? I did not do anything amazing conversationally, but what did I do? I just kept gradually escalating it. I didn't do anything stupid, and I was 10 to 15% more interesting than necessary, than the average guy would have been. Also recognize that once I get her sitting down with me, the set gets a lot easier. That's absolutely key. As soon as you move a girl, or as soon as you sit with a girl also, but especially if you move a girl, the set fundamentally changes. As long as, say you open a girl in the middle of a club and you're standing there talking to her just in the middle of the club. As long as you're standing there talking to her, you are forever the guy that is hitting on her. You are forever the guy that's picking her up. It's even worse if the girls are sitting and you're standing. Now you're really the guy that's hitting on them and they're the girls being hit on. But if you say, even as little as say this is the hallway in the club, and I say, oh hey, there's a lot of traffic here, just come over here for a second. And you pull her over against a wall 5 feet away, all of a sudden now she's with you. And now the entire dynamic has fundamentally changed. Now you no longer have to qualify yourself so hard, now you no longer have to work so hard. You can just sit back and it now is like a date. It's like you're already together. I don't have to do much. I can just sit and make normal conversation. If it was still out on the street, I would have had to been forced to be much more interesting and much more engaging because there's the threat of her leaving at any given moment. Right? That's super, super, super important.